And firstly, I'd like to take apologies. We've had apologies from Councillor Alan James and Councillor Geraint Lloyd-Williams. Are there any more apologies from members?
Chair, who has spoken? Who will?
Councillor Rachel Flynn is just at the dentist. She'll be with us in about 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hugh Williams won't be here today either.
Councillor Cheryl Williams and Councillor Brian Blakely won't be with us this morning either, Chair.
If Councillor Anton Sampson isn't on now, he'll be sending his apologies. He's not well at all, but he just might join us.
And Councillor Martin Holland, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, it's okay. Tony's given Rachel's apologies. She's going to be a little late, and I think also Peter Scott may be a little late as well, but not too late.
That's Thursday, Martin. Not
oh, that's Thursday.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can't see you, Peter. This is the problem with these short screens. Thank you.
Right, moving on. Can we have any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it's a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the chamber for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. If a personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete a declaration of interest form, which is available online.
Are there any declarations of interest? Moving on, item number 3 on the agenda, urgent matters as agreed by the chair. I believe Councillor Paul Pennington has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question, and I believe Bobby Feely is going to answer it, is can you tell us how many individual refugees we are definitely taking in Denbighshire and when they arrive? That's in relation to the Afghanistan crisis, of course.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to turn my video off just in case there's any interference. Thank you, Paul, for the question, and I'm sure it's something that a lot of people is on a lot of people's minds at the moment. So first of all, can I say our thoughts are with all those affected by the recent tragic events in Afghanistan, including all those living here, veterans, interpreters, other refugees concerned about family members back home. We have all watched in horror as events over the last few months have unfolded in Afghanistan, causing so much immense uncertainty for its people. I can confirm that Cabinet members discussed this situation regarding refugees from Afghanistan yesterday and have agreed that Denbighshire should increase our current commitment through the Global Resettlement Scheme to 10 families. This will enable us to offer housing and support to 5 Afghan families at this time, although this could well be extended if the situation and the scheme continues past the first year. This is in addition to the existing commitment to support 5 families per year under the existing Syrian and Universal Refugee Programme agreed a few years ago. One Afghan family has already been accepted and settled in Denbighshire over the last 2 weeks. Accommodation is currently being sourced across the county, initially in the private rented sector in line with the current refugee programme, and we have had a number of offers already ranging from single rooms to 5-bedroomed house. While we welcome offers of accommodation, it will not always be possible to make use of them due to the makeup of the individual families. Unfortunately, Denbighshire are not able to receive offers of furniture, clothes, toys, etc., but are working alongside other organisations who will try and find effective ways to use these thoughtful offers of help. The Home Office have announced a one-year funding programme for the Afghan scheme to enable local authorities to provide support for education and employment. In addition, they have indicated an ongoing commitment to support housing costs. The funding is similar to that received by the Council for the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Scheme, and members will be aware that we have used this very successfully, supporting 22 families over the past 5 years into suitable housing and education, with 3 individuals now in work and 1 undertaking their HGV licence. These have been supported by a dedicated mentor in Working Denbighshire, funded by the scheme. Cabinet members are pleased to be supporting Afghan families in line with the desire for Wales to be seen as a nation of sanctuary, to ensure the families can integrate within the Welsh communities from day one of arrival. We will do everything we can to put in place appropriate housing and a warm welcome so that our new neighbours will become important parts of our community, as many have done before. Given the housing situation, this will indeed be a difficult task, but one we have every intention of fulfilling. Each local authority across Wales is playing its part in supporting the Afghan programme. And whilst this commitment is in relation to Denbighshire, we are working regionally and at a strategic level to share knowledge and support as and when appropriate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Feely. Has Councillor Paul Pennington a follow-up question?
No, that was a very comprehensive answer. Thank you, Bobby. That's answered any questions I'm sure most of us would have had. I do think that's great news. Thank you very much. If we were in the room together, I'd probably applaud that answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Item agenda number 4, minutes of a previous meeting. There's 2 sets of minutes. Firstly, for Tuesday, the 6th of July, 2021. If we go through for accuracy, items 1, 2 and 3. Items 4. Item 5, annual performance review. Item 6, committee timetable. Item 7, county council forward working programme. And then secondly, matters arising. Again, items 1, 2 and 3. Items 4.
Tudalen 3 a tudalen 8 os gwelwch dda, Madam Cadeirydd.
Page 3 and page 8, please, Madam Chair.
Right, go on, Councillor Mary Lloyd Davis.
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. Halfway down the second page, page 8. Ideas will be discussed with the members of the Senedd and members of Parliament. Have we had a list? How many applications have gone in? The bids that have been submitted, have we had a list? It's the report by leader, Councillor Hugh Evans.
Sorry.
Could I respond to that, Chair, please?
Sorry, of course, Councillor Evans.
Thank you for that. Diolch am y cwestiwn.
Thank you for the question, Mary. As we explained in the member area group meetings, we discussed the projects and asked members to put projects forward. Some members had sent in projects before the member area group meetings. After the discussions at the MAGs, officers started working on those projects. So the officers have a list of the projects being moved forward and that they're working through those. If there are any projects that aren't ready or aren't accepted for this fund, then the officers will contact members to let them know the reasons for that and why that's happened. There was quite a tight deadline in a way to respond to this process. We're not used to working at this pace, but I think after the 20th of September, it will be quite clear, and we will be coming back to report to the MAGs on the projects that we can proceed with. This is something that we've learned from this process in Corwen Llangollen. Some projects are more ready to go than others, but it's important that we discuss this and explain to members at the appropriate time. Thank you very much, Hugh.
Thank you. Moving on, page 10, page 11. Okay. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for a true and accurate record of the minutes of the 6th of July? Councillor Maverick Lloyd-Davis, proposer. Councillor Anne Davis, seconder. Thank you. And second set of minutes is for Thursday, the 22nd of July, for full council. Again, we will go through these for accuracy. Page 13, there's only one page. And for matters arising. No, councillors all happy. Can I please have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Hugh Evans, proposer, Councillor Peter Scott as a seconder. Many thanks, councillors. Moving on, item number 5, diversity and democracy. This is to consider a report by the Head of Legal, HR and Democratic Services to bring to the attention of members the WLGA's Diversity and Democracy Programme. Can I hand over to Officer Gary, to Councillor Hugh Evans, the leader, to introduce the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. As you can see from the reports, the WLGA have done an awful lot of work to look at the challenges facing the diversity in local authorities, and I've given a flavour of the barriers that we all face. And it's important that it's the WLGA that have led on this in order for there to be a consistent approach across all 22 authorities in Wales. And it is a challenging agenda because it requires a lot of goodwill, and it requires a lot of people to be involved and having a genuine approach into addressing this issue, some of which will be the political parties as well, without delving too much into their business, but they do have a role to play in this. There's also a timely report as we approach the 22 elections. And if you are minded to support the recommendations, I would look forward to see the work of the Democratic Services Committee and to see what their proposals are for us as Denbighshire to become a more diverse council in the action plan. Nobody, Chair, could deny that this is an issue, and Denbighshire is not alone in facing this challenge. We therefore must play our part and show our commitment to being a diverse council. So I'll pass you on, if you wouldn't mind, Chair, now to Gary Williams, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader. Yes, as the leader said, the WLGA has had a working group looking at the barriers to participation with a view to increasing the diversity of council chambers, and it's also an agenda of the Welsh Government as well. The report that's before you has a number of appendices. The first appendix is a report that was presented to the WLGA Council with the findings of their working group. You'll also then have a letter at Appendix 2 that was signed by the leader of every political group represented on the WLGA, so it's a cross-party initiative. And thirdly, you'll see a draft declaration that the council would, we'd be asking council to make to commit to improving the diversity of representation in the council. As the leader said, this is a very broad agenda, and it's not something that any of the stakeholders can deal with alone. And there's a role for Welsh Government, there's a role for the WLGA, there's a role for the political parties, and there's a role for local authorities. And what we'd be asking council to do today, if you're minded to approve the declaration, is to ask the Democratic Services Committee to take a more in-depth look at the sort of work that we could do as an authority to encourage participation prior to the local government elections in 2022. So without wishing to take you through the detail of the report, there were just some key issues that the working group had identified, and they were the primary barriers as they saw it to participation. Firstly, there was a general lack of awareness amongst the public about the role and the contribution made by councillors, which the working group did feel had been helped somewhat by the pandemic, in that councils very much were the first port of call for the public in assistance in dealing with the pandemic. Another area was around the social media abuse that is aimed at councillors, and very often predominantly aimed at female councillors. There is a campaign which is being coordinated by the Local Government Association and the Welsh Local Government Association and others, called Civility in Public Life, which is looking at trying to address the way in which people can be protected from those sorts of online harms. Another area was training and development, and a feeling that some people felt that they didn't necessarily possess the skills or tools to become a councillor, and were unaware of the support that would be made available to them. And the time commitment, particularly the timing of meetings, making it difficult sometimes for people with caring responsibilities or people who had jobs or businesses that they had to run. And another area was around remuneration, and the concern that councillors should be able to claim all of the salaries and allowances that are available to them without fear of criticism for doing that, in order to ensure that the role of councillor is something that's available to anyone who's interested in doing it, and not just to people who might be able to afford to do it. You'll see through the WLGA report that there are a number of potential actions there. Some of them will be clearly out with the scope of the local authority, and they will be matters for government. There'll be matters for political parties in terms of how they encourage people within their own systems to participate, and how people get selected to be candidates. But for us, the key issues will be around improving awareness of the role of councillor, and we have over the last few council elections run road shows to encourage people who are interested in standing or are potentially thinking about standing to come along and learn more about the role of the councillor, how the council works, what remuneration is available, what support is available, etc. And we've had the benefit of councillors who've come to give at those meetings the benefit of their experience in order that they can pass on the things that they learn from becoming new councillors. We can also look at the flexibility of our meeting arrangements, remote working, those sorts of things which might make it easier for people who've got busy careers or family responsibilities to be able to take part. And we'll be able to provide some information to the public about the sorts of training and development that's available. So the WLGA, we're looking at what our induction programme will be for councillors following the 22 elections, and the WLGA is doing work along with the network of democratic services officers across Wales to come up with, if you like, almost like a national curriculum for councillors of training materials that they will provide and that can be facilitated locally. WLGA has produced its own mini website called Be a Councillor, which has lots of information and materials there for people. And we will be making sure that people are aware of the remuneration that's available to members, making members aware once they're elected of how that works and what further allowances, if they have caring responsibilities, that they may be able to access. So those are the main issues for the council. Clearly, there are a lot of actions in that report that are identified for other people, such as political parties and the government. But what we're looking for today is a commitment to the declaration in Appendix 3, which is, apologies, I'll get the, thank you, Chair. It's on page 51 of the pack. The Chair's on the ball, even if I'm not. If I just go through the declaration for you, it is that the council commits to being a diverse council, agrees to provide a clear public commitment to improving diversity and democracy, demonstrates an open and welcoming culture to all, promoting the highest standards of behaviour and conduct, that we will set out a diverse council action plan ahead of the 2022 local elections, that we will demonstrate a commitment to a duty of care for councillors, that we will provide flexibility in our council business by reviewing our arrangements for the holding of meetings, and that will ensure that all members are aware of the allowances and salaries to which they're entitled, particularly any reimbursement for costs of care, so that all members receive fair remuneration for their work and that the role of member is not limited to those who can afford it. So that's what we're looking for council to do today, is to endorse that declaration, and then we will take more detailed reports to the Democratic Services Committee and look at working up an action plan of activities before and after the elections, so that A, we can make people aware of what might be available to them, and then we ensure that we deliver it to them once the election's been held. I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair. I don't think I can usefully add anything else at this point.
Thank you very much for your very comprehensive report. If I open it up to county councillors now. Councillor Martin Holland, I'm not sure whether that's a historical hand or whether that's a...
Sorry, Madam Chairman, it is a historical hand, but I reserve the right to come back in a moment too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paul Pennington.
Thank you, Chair. Just out of interest, a few years ago, I tried to work out what the sort of diversity makeup of our council was. You know, because as most of you know, I've been arguing for more flexible meetings for many, many years because I found it difficult to attend. We are currently using the flexible model, and my attendance has gone through the roof. I'm not the only one. Councillor Gareth Davis, or Gareth Davis MS, is beaming in from Cardiff, so I'm sure he's finding that quite useful to do both of his jobs. Has any work been done to work out the current makeup of the council in terms of whether it reflects our community or not? Thank you.
Not detailed, and that's something that the Democratic Services Committee can look at. Clearly, just in terms of visually being able to look across the chamber, there's an underrepresentation of women in the council chamber. I would not necessarily be aware of any other protected characteristics that may be present in the chamber in terms of disability or sexuality, etc. But the important thing, I think, for us as a council is that we try and make sure that we get enough information out there to as wide a range of people as possible before the next elections, that they may not feel that participation in local democracy is for them, but at least if they decide that that's the case, they're doing it in full knowledge of all the information and support that's available to them. And our role, I think, is to encourage as much participation as possible. The council doesn't select candidates, and the council doesn't vote for anybody. We hold the elections, we take the nominations, and we count the votes. So there's clearly a role for political parties in terms of their processes, and you'll see that the WLGA report talks about things like having mentors within local political parties for people from underrepresented groups, etc. So I think that's work the Democratic Services Committee will do, I think, Paul, is to take a good look at what our current profile is to see whether or not it changes after the election.
Thank you.
No follow-up question. Thank you. Councillor Tony Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, one point I would welcome, actually, casting my mind back to 2017, because I work for Denbighshire, even for nomination as councillor, I had to give up my job. And I gather that now has changed, that you would now only have to give up your job if you were successful in the election. Which, as there's a few teachers on the council, and it was a bit of a dicey situation back then, because it meant that I had to give up my teaching and I have exam students and things like that. So it was a very difficult time. So I welcome the change on that. I think that's a very positive move. But it's still a problem, though, if you are a Denbighshire teacher, or probably anybody working for Denbighshire, that you have to give up your job as soon as you're elected. Whereas other councillors working for different authorities could maintain their classes and, shall we say, resign their positions at the end of August. Thank you.
I just confirm that's correct. At the last election, the rules were that if you worked for a local authority, you were disqualified from standing for election. The government did consult on changing that to allow people to be elected to a council and to continue working for it. There's some obvious difficulties with that. The consultation threw up. So the position now under the new act is that you can stand for election to the council that you're employed by. But if you're elected, you then have to resign your employment in order to take up your position as a councillor. So it's moved somewhat, but it hasn't moved the whole way.
Thank you. That makes the situation clearer. Councillor Mary Lloyd Davis.
Diolch yn fawr, Parchu'r Cadeirydd.
Thank you very much, Chair. Looking at page 31 or page 11 about remuneration. I'm not sure who would answer this, but how much enthusiasm has Welsh Government got to put in place arrangements for councillors who lose their seats? You know, members in both houses receive some money. A member of Parliament in London and a member of Senedd in Cardiff are remunerated if they lose a seat. Will this be put into place for county councillors? Any indication of that? My understanding is that this is a matter for the government, and they've asked the independent panel on remuneration to produce a paper for them about what would be possible for them to do, if they want to make any changes to the current arrangement. And they would need to consider whether they need to change the legislation or whether they can introduce changes in the current regulations under the 2011 measure, where the independent remuneration panel was established. So I don't know whether this will come out at all or whether it'll come in before next year's elections, but I do believe that the panel is undertaking work to look at this issue. Thank you very much, Gary. I'm sure that the member of the Senedd will have something to say.
Can I bring in Councillor Bobby Feely? No. Shall we move on to Councillor Gareth Davis?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not quite sure what Mary's expected me to say, to be honest. But it's not just a question I've got really. It's more of a it's more of a point of order that I'm not actually beaming from Cardiff. I'm in the constituency office, and you know, I think if we are being reflective and truly reflective of a community here in the council, then I think possibly we should be looking at where we're currently sitting on a virtual meeting and thinking, well, what coronavirus rules are currently in place to stop us sitting in that chamber, all of us, Parliament's back in sitting, when the summer recess is over next week for the Senedd, I think there's plans to have more members in the chamber. So I think if we're talking about being reflective of communities, we need to be working back to having capacity physical meetings so that we can start getting back to some normality rather than this sort of half in, half out approach, and truly be reflective of all of our communities in Denbighshire. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bobby Feely.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a few sort of thoughts, if you like, re the gender balance issue. We're not as good, we're below the national average here in Denbighshire on that, in that there's only 14 ladies or women, call us what you like, or not what you like, but however you want to put it. There's 14 out of 47. There's one cabinet member out of 8, and there's only one chair out of 5 chairs. So we're sort of falling a bit below. But what I would like to put forward is that a lot of this requires a culture change. You know, a lot of women just don't see themselves in the role of a politician, because in the media, it's always, you know, how often do we see a crowd being photographed, and they're nearly all, the majority are men or middle-aged men in many cases. So I think there is a huge culture change which is across the nation, which needed to get people, you know, women to actually come forward. I can remember my very first time back in the 1980s when I went on to Glyndŵr district, and there was only one lady on there. A tiny little lady from Llangollen. I can remember her quite well, Morfydd. In fact, I met her son recently. And, you know, it took a lot of guts for her to come forward under those circumstances in those days. So I do think the culture change is needed in the wider sphere, not just within the councils. I think the councils, given that people do come onto the council, I think the women, you know, do make quite a good mark, but you know, it's hard to get them to stand up and be counted. And as for the older people coming forward, well, part of our ageing well agenda, if you like, is that people do carry on leading useful lives for as long as they possibly can, whatever their age, as long as they're able to do it. So I think it's good to see so many older people carrying on, being useful and taking part in the community life. So I wouldn't decry, I wouldn't say that the only good councillor is a young councillor by any manner of means. I think older councillors bring a lot of experience to that job, and experience of life as well as a working career. Okay, just wanted to make those points.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martin Holland.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things. First and foremost, I broadly welcome the report and the principles that it's laying down. I think this is a move in the right direction, and it's for us all to be welcoming when we're looking at encouraging people to stand for councils. If one could say there's anything that's good come out of COVID, and there isn't much that has been good, the one thing is actually that it has meant that we've moved the sort of technology on, and that we have been able to meet remotely. Personally, I look forward to the day when we do return to formal meetings where we can get together, and how it's important those sort of chats before the meeting over a cup of coffee with fellow councillors from all different parties. And I think we have lost some of that, because these days we come in remotely and we're straight into a meeting. But I do also believe, though, that it gives the opportunity for more people to stand, and if they can attend remotely for an hour or an hour and a half without taking up the whole of their day, then I think that's good news, and I think a lot of people will benefit from that. The other thing, just as a question, one of the headlines is abuse from members of the public. I think one of the things I have noticed with COVID, that not so much against myself, but I have seen more aggression against other councillors and things like that. Can I ask Gary, is there any feedback on that? Are you getting complaints from councillors about aggressive attitudes from members of the public towards them? Just as a matter of interest.
Anecdotally, yeah, not scientifically, but anecdotally, yes, I do know that there is a disturbing trend in respect of the way in which people interact with councillors and other public figures on social media. I think I referenced it earlier on. The LGA and the WLGA are running a civility and public life campaign, looking at producing materials for council and others in order to assist them in protecting themselves online, and also looking at what actions we can take in terms of public awareness, etc., of trying to deal with the abuse that is directed. And actually the information in the report, or the work of the working group, seems to suggest that actually the abuse does appear to be aimed at female politicians and councillors more than it is their male counterparts. So it's not something, I don't think it's good enough to say that, oh well, it comes with the territory. It's just bad behaviour, and the fact that you have a frustration with the activities of the council or whatever is no excuse to be abusive to any individual, whether they're an elected member or not.
A very serious point, well made, yeah. Councillor Gwyneth Kensler.
Diolch Mawr iawn.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Local government as a whole, since I was first elected in 1995, I have seen much reduction in our powers and far more centralisation by both Westminster and Cardiff. Central government does not give local government the respect that it's due. And I think that in recent years, we've seen far more projects, or what we must do if we want money from the central government. So I think there's a lot of disillusionment. We women don't like to waste time. We recognise that life is short, and do we really want to spend time on something where we don't really have much of a voice? And especially, I have to say, having been in the cabinet a few times, the cabinet system has diminished, in my view, local government. Social media, yes, has taken over, as Gary has spoken about. And we just have to, everyone just has to have thick skins. Sometimes you could come home and cry, but in public you have to just pretend that you can take it all. I don't know what the answer is. We have tried so much. And also we've tried for local committees, for example, the Welsh, the Arts Council, Welsh Arts Council, has made this a priority as well. And we should be looking at our management committees or our boards to see if we can get better representation of the population. But it's very, very difficult to do, extremely difficult to get Black, ethnic minority, women, people to come onto our management committees and boards. It's a dilemma. I don't know how we can do it. Diolch.
Yeah, I think the idea behind this initiative is to try and educate people who are interested in making some contribution to their community or to participating in democracy about the things that councils can do and the things that they do. I mean, the council provides a broad range of services, virtually from cradle to grave for people, many things which are incredibly important to individuals and communities are things that the council is directly responsible for. And one of the pushes behind this campaign is to make sure that the people who might be interested in standing understand the full breadth of things that they can get involved in and the sort of influence that they can have in their communities. So that's the message we would be, you know, the political thing about central and local government is a matter for others, but the purpose of this is to make sure that there are people who come to the roadshows we run and they don't know that the councillor is responsible for certain functions, and it's a bit of an eye-opener for them when they understand the broad range of things that we do. And I think that's the message we want to get across. There are lots of things that you can influence as a councillor, and if you want to make an impact, you can. We just need to make sure that as many people as possible are aware of how to become a councillor, and they have the information about the role of councillor to enable them to make an informed decision as to whether they want to stand or not.
Thank you. Councillor Ann Davis.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Cadeirydd, Madam Cadeirydd.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I've been a councillor now for 13 and a half years, and I must say the public have been very kind towards me, but I must say we can get aggression, abuse, badly treated by fellow councillors. I'm happy to say that's only happened to me by one member. I do feel, Gary, that there should be more importance put on the code of conduct towards councillors and how they're treated by other members. When I first became a town councillor 15, 16 years ago, I was the only lady on there. The previous lady had left, and that was because she was being badly treated. So I think, you know, we should be making sure that kindness is adhered at all times towards each other with respect. Diolch yn fawr.
Yes, a key part of the declaration and the work that's being done around diversity is to encourage high standards of conduct, both amongst members, but also between the public and their elected officials. And that's something that is emphasised in the work that the WLGA has been doing and is part of the Civility and Public Life campaign.
Thank you. Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only wanted to come in and just to highlight what Anne has just said about the respect within the council and within the council chamber, irrespective where that council chamber might be, whether it might be at county level or whether it might be at town or community level. I think that there is certainly still a degree of disrespect occasionally to women in the chamber, and I do welcome any change that will bring about that respect to other councillors and how we all respect one another. But I have to say also that I do welcome this document. I do believe that the diversity document is worthwhile, and I think it should be pursued. But I would like just to flag up that women in politics need to be on, I would imagine, the diversity group that are seeking to firm up the document. And I believe that both political parties and women in politics should have a loud voice in the diversity document that is being prepared at this moment in time, that we're being asked now to sign up to before it's in its before it's been completed. But I do believe also that political parties are taking on board a much heavier load than they've ever taken on before, in that each as far as I know, I certainly know within the Labour Party, we're taking diversity very seriously and have done for many, many years now. And we are now informing any prospective councillor or woman that wants to participate in public life. We're providing mentors and information on how this can be achieved. I always feel that I've had a great deal of respect in the years that I've been on council, but I have seen other not so good experiences as mine, and wouldn't want that to progress any further. I think that if we can change it, and I'm sure we are on that path now, and certainly political parties, as I've said, are taking a huge role in informing, mentoring, guiding, and hopefully will be successful in achieving that we do have more women on our local government, and in, I believe, the Welsh Assembly are very equally matched. But Welsh women, I do believe, are achievers. And so I think that we have to bring in this vote in this diversity document and embrace it within Denbighshire. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Emrys Wyn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Congratulations to you for chairing the meeting as the first time as Vice Chair. You're doing excellent work. Can I say quickly that I'm also very supportive of this document as it stands, and any councillor worth his salt would see the value of this document, I hope. It's a very civilised way of behaving within the council. We have got further responsibilities, of course, towards our residents, and we should be including and ensuring that our residents and that we provide for the diversity within our communities, which includes making sure that people with disabilities have the ability to cross the road safely, to be able to come into offices safely, and to be able to access the same service as other residents in the area expect. It's a pity, really, because later on we will be discussing the possibility of having a champion for the election when the 16-year-olds will have an opportunity to vote. It's a pity in a way that we need to have champions for these different groups, whether it's for older people or people with disabilities. It should be natural that we do this without having to have individuals acting as champions. I'm not against having champions, don't get me wrong, but it's a pity that we're in a situation that we do have to appoint some. In response to what Gary Williams said, that it'll be a matter of educating, certainly. We have got to educate. I think Councillor Joan Butterfield said that town and community councillors and county councillors, that we've got different roles, and it's important that the public are aware of that, because a lot of the aggression and on social media sites is caused by confusion about the roles of the different councils. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Glanswingler.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Just to quickly reiterate, this is not just about men or women or whatever sex. It's not about young or old. There's lots of other groups that we need to encourage as well. Disabled people, people with other underlying health problems as well that want to take part in what it is the council do. So I just wanted to make it, just point out that it's not just about men and women or young and old. It's a whole you know, a whole nother level there as well of people that we could do with getting involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Glenn, that's right. And clearly, when we talk about diversity and democracy, the agenda is to cover all protected characteristics. So that's race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexual orientation, disability, etc. And you will see in the WLGA working group document that's appended to the report that some work's been done at a national level, looking at whether there should be, for example, a fund that would assist people with disabilities who might have extra barriers to being able to sort of stand for election, to be able to help them with that. So that it's not just gender, there's a lot of work going on across a number of different strands. But the key thing really for us today is the council happy to endorse the declaration and to get the Democratic Services Committee to look at what practical things we as a council can do as our bit, if you like. Clearly there'll be other stakeholders like political parties, WLGA and government who will have other things to do, but it's just taking those practical steps of things that we can do.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Mayor. That sounds good. That, and you I must say, from other comments that have been made this morning, you look very at home sitting in that chair. So whatever happens in the future, I will look forward to looking in next year when hopefully you will be the chair of the council. I've got a question for Gary Williams, head of legal. You've mentioned workshops a couple of times. Will you circulate the dates of when these workshops are happening? Will it be feasible for members to come along, whether they're pre-selected, one from each political group? What's your response to that, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I think workshops. I think we called them road shows before. Whatever we call them, we'll be holding some events. We held more than one. We held them in different areas. I think we did one in Rhyl and Prestatyn, we did one in Denbigh, we did one somewhere else the last time. And what we do is it'll be a general call out to the public. We'll promote them through our comms team. Come and find out what it's like to be a councillor, what's involved, what sort of time commitment, what support you'll get, what remuneration is. And what we've had previously at these events is councillors who've come along and have volunteered to speak about their experience. So the document talks about people, particularly from underrepresented groups, maybe coming along to say, these are the barriers I found, these are the ways I got round them, or these are the hurdles that I still find difficult. Getting people who were newly elected this time to come and talk to people about their experience of going through the process, both the sort of selection campaign and then how they found their feet as a councillor after being there. And we also, I think, had a cabinet member last time as well to talk about the different aspects of the role that come with being a cabinet member. So the idea is to give people as broad a picture as possible of what life as a councillor is like, warts and all. We don't try and sell them a dream. we do encourage people to talk about the difficulties that they've experienced as well, because we want people who, if they're deciding to stand, they're committed to it, they understand the pros and cons, and they've made that decision. But what we want to do is to make as much of that information as possible to as many people as possible, so that they can decide whether or not they want to get involved with all the information.
Yeah, fine, Gary. I'll probably put my name forward then. Yeah, I would eagerly like to go on one of them road shows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no more questions, can we please go now to the recommendation? 3.1, the council notes the contents and actions outlined within the WLGA council report and letter contained in appendices 1 and 2. 3.2, that the council commits to being a diverse council and supports the principles set out in the draft declaration in Appendix 3. And 0.33, that the Democratic Services Committee is tasked with developing a diverse council action plan ahead of the 2022 local government elections. Can we now go to the vote? Oh, can I have a proposer, please?
Yeah. I'll
Proposer,
propose.
Councillor Mark Young. Seconder, Councillor Bobby Feely.
What I suggest, members, is I would suggest this might be something you'd be able to do by affirmation of the meeting. So I think if you ask if everyone is in favour and then just ask if anybody's against, rather than going to a Zoom ballot for this, unless anybody feels particularly strongly that they want to go to the votes. But perhaps best just to ask, it's been moved and seconded, is anybody against it?
As advised by Gary Williams, if it's been moved, proposed and seconded, are there any councillors opposed? I take that from your silence that all are in favour. Thank you very much, councillors. Moving on to item number 6, notice of motion. This is proposed by Councillor Tony Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I'll probably just switch my camera off just in case there's any bandwidth problems. Okay, the motion I'm proposing this morning is for Denbighshire County Council to appoint a young people's champion. This age group in society has been the most affected by change in the last few years. 16 to 17-year-olds getting the votes, they need to be engaged. COVID has disrupted the school life and indeed education for teenagers. Social media in the teenage category certainly has left me far behind with the endless platforms that are now available. Many councils in Wales have a young people's champion. I know Ynys have one. And I have no doubt that many of our backbenchers would be able and willing to meet the challenge of this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Paul Pennington, have you got a question?
Thank you, Chair. Speaking as a teacher and somebody who's worked for children's charities for getting on for 30 years now, I'm obviously fully in favour of anything that supports young people. I do find it slightly ironic that this motion has been put forward by a member of the Conservative Cabinet, a very active member of the Conservative Party in Cabinet, should I say. I'd just like to point out that according to research by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, published just before the pandemic, 30% of children across the UK are living in poverty as a direct result of Conservative austerity. And before the Labour Party reflect on that, it's an even higher figure in Wales. There's 31% of children living in poverty in Wales. Child poverty in Denbighshire rose to the highest level in 6 years before the pandemic. 4,110 children in Denbighshire are living in poverty. That's 20.5% of our children. More than 54,000 food bank parcels went to children in Wales in that year. According to the Trussell Trust, around 2,000 children in Denbighshire rely on food banks to survive. That figure does not include the many independent food banks. Current forecasts of what's happened during the pandemic means that is far, far, far worse. Whilst I would support anything that supports young people, I do find it slightly ironic and disingenuous that a member of the Conservative Party has put this forward today. Thank you.
Councillor Rachel Flynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, I was thinking about what people have been saying this morning and also last night. Do you think we could maybe call it Young Person and Diversities Champion? Because then we're covering all people in a minority position. Would that be plausible, do you think?
Okay. It's entirely up to members. We haven't had a second yet, but I was going to come in at one point just to, if you like, set some of the historical context in respective champions and the role of champions in the authority. A few years ago, County Council made a decision that it didn't want to have any more standalone champion roles than were already in existence at that time. And those were the older people's champion, the homelessness champion, the carers champion, and the learning disability champion. And that any other champion roles that were mooted either by government or elsewhere should be roles that were taken on by the relevant lead member. Now, clearly, there's nothing to stop council changing its mind in respect of that, but I do just need to point that out. In terms of the suggestion that the role of the champion be different, what I would suggest would be that if members are minded to look into the role of a champion in respect of young people or any amended title, it would probably be better for us to bring a proper report to council, setting out what a potential role description might be for any such champion, and for members then to make a decision as to A, whether they wanted that role, B, how it should be conducted either by lead member or by a backbench member, and if it was for a backbench member, then to take nominations, etc. in advance. So I think if we're going to get, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if we're going to get bids of changing the role, then I think you would be best served having a report on the role of champions generally coming back to council, and we can explore perhaps with members and the Democratic Services Committee what the nature of those roles should be. Well, you have in terms of the technical bits of the meeting, you have a notice of motion that's been put forward by Councillor Thomas. It's not been seconded by anybody yet, and you haven't had a formal amendment to amend it. So I think the issue is the substantive motion put forward by Councillor Thomas. Is there anyone who's seconding that? And if there's a seconder, then you can move to debate that, and it would be possible for a member during that debate to move an amendment. My suggestion would be that it come back to council in the terms of a formal report, and you may also want to hear from the relevant lead member for the young person's portfolio on the subject.
Can I invite councillors to second it? Is there a seconder to?
Madam Chairman, I'm happy to second this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martin Holland. And perhaps we could invite Councillor Hugh Hildred Roberts to come in as lead member of children.
Thank you, Chair. Bore Pawb. First of all, thank you, Tony, for the motion, and thank you, Paul, for the stats on children poverty across the UK. Quite frankly, I want to address this on a Denbighshire level, and I don't give two hoots about political UK or anything. I want to address the issue in Denbighshire of what we're doing for young people. And what I want to be clear is that what we're doing for young people is that our teaching staff and schools have been immense over the last 18 months in the way they have dealt with our children during this pandemic and the massive challenges that the profession has faced. And I, as a proud father, have seen it firsthand, the work that these schools are doing with children at the moment. So first of all, let's be clear. I don't take this as a bashing about what Denbighshire are doing, because, you know, we proudly boast that our referrals of children during the pandemic have bucked the national trend and gone the other way and have reduced. So we must get great pride in that, in the work that our schools are doing. You know, do I think we need a young people's champion? Well, if I'm being honest, no, at this time, because if I wasn't considering the up and coming election, because as I said, I think we do a really good job, but I think there may well be merit in having somebody leading that engagement, the 16 to 18-year-olds in Denbighshire over the next 6, 7, whatever months we've got left, because I think it's a massive gap. You know, I've got a lad who's 15-year-old, and, you know, he'll be 16 next year, and I don't think at this moment in time that he's fully engaged in the political arena to understand the merits. And I think somebody said, I think it was Gary earlier, you know, when I bring the school children in for their school visits, and I explain to them, I ask them, what do the council do? Some of their teachers don't even know what the council do. You know, and I explain to them, when they go to school in the morning, they drive on council roads, they walk on council pavements. You know, when it's snowing, the road is cleared by the council. When they go to the library, it's the council. When they have food in school, it's the dinner lady, it's the council, it's the teachers that paid. There are so many things that children don't know. And I remember having a debate with Bobby Feely in my early years as a councillor. And it was on the closure of a well-on. And she said to me, well, you never responded to the consultation. And at the age of whatever I was then, late 30s, why would I work? Because the consultation was social care, but that didn't mean anything to me because my mum is already dead, and it didn't trigger at that time because I wasn't educated enough. So where I think there is merit here, look, let's take the politics out of this, guys. Let's look at what we're doing for the best of Denbighshire. Is that I don't care if it's a Tory applied, whoever's put it forward. Let's put a paper together looking at the merits of getting a backbencher to help me, because I can't do it on my own, to engage youngsters 16 to 18 over the next few months, that we get a good turnout of the election and hopefully engage them more in politics. And what we've discussed today already is actually some of them might want to stand one day to become a councillor and tick all the boxes that we want to tick. So as a lead member, I don't take it as a bash on the portfolio, because I think that the staff are doing a sterling job, the same as our schools. But I do think there could be merit in working around a young people's champion just to engage the youngsters for this, because we are on completely new ground here. Diolch.
Thank you. Councillor Ardwell Roberts.
Diolch Mrs Cadeirydd. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi.
Thank you, Mrs Chairman, and it's lovely to see you after the summer holidays. My question is regarding this. Slightly late in the term of this council, I believe it should have been put forward earlier. What's important for me is that many of these children have Welsh language as their first language. So I hope whoever takes on this role will be bilingual. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Glan Swingler.
Yeah, thank you very much. We seem to have already got this down to young people that are 16 to 18. Yeah, children and young people. There are so many, so many aspects, from going to school to, playing with their friends, playing sports. But then there's family backgrounds and the social issues that go with it. I'd like to know, before I vote for this, what this role of the children and young people's champion would be. What is the role? What do they do? I'd want to see things like letters being written to stop universal credit being cut. Just to, as one thing, because poverty leads to everything else and so many other problems. So I hope that, but I'd like to know what the role would entail, really.
Well, what I think goes back to the suggestion that I made. If members are minded to investigate the role of a champion for young people, then we could take a report to the Democratic Services Committee to try and define, if you like, A, young people, B, the role, and bring a report back to Council with a recommendation from Democratic Services Committee for Council to consider. That's if members are minded to support the motion. We're in members' hands, but I would suggest that rather than make a final decision today, because there's some uncertainty about the role, etc., that we do take something to Democratic Services Committee if members are minded to have one, and then we'll bring it back to Council and ask Council to look at a role description which would set out exactly what we expected of such a position.
Gary, just to come in, if I may, we have a full council briefing on the 8th of November anyway on how we engage young children and young people in politics. So that's the politics side, but I totally agree with Glenn. It needs to be a job description that covers all areas, and that needs to be drafted. We can't really vote on that today, I don't think.
I think we can perhaps vote on the concept and ask Democratic Services to look into it and
yes,
you may want to invite the mover of the motion to amend it slightly to reflect that, so that Council asks the Democratic Services Committee to define a role of a young person's champion in order the report be brought back to Council to determine what the role should be. And if they agree that the role should exist, that they seek nominations to be appointed to it, perhaps.
Councillor Tony Thomas, can we come back to you for your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. So, yes, I'm happy with that. I would like to point out that I did try and bring this motion quite a few months ago, but there was some mishap, shall we say, with it on Democratic, but not a problem. But if that's what the council members would like, then I'm happy to go along with that.
Chair, could I come in? Could actually, I should have made this apology at the beginning. Councillor Thomas did indeed send a notice of motion in to me before the last meeting of council. I completely missed it, my fault. I did provide an explanation to Councillor Thomas. He was very gracious about it and allowed us to put it on the agenda this time. So I do thank him for that. And what I would suggest, Chair, is that the council refers the notice of motion to the Democratic Services Committee and asks the Democratic Services Committee to look at the role and bring a report back with a recommendation to council.
So you have the Democratic Services, sorry, just so that I'm clear in my head and the county councillors are clear in their head, but if we put this to the vote, we are asking Democratic Services to look at the role, to define the role, and then to come back to County Council to vote on whether we actually have this role.
That's not the motion as is, but I think Councillor Thomas indicated he'd be happy with that. So what effectively you'd be doing is you'd be taking the motion, you'd be referring it to Democratic Services Committee and asking them to work up a role description, if you like, and bring it back with a recommendation to council for council then to make a decision on the role and if they were minded to have the role, to appoint to it. So in other words, council would be making the decision on the basis of a bit more information in terms of who the role was aimed at and what the role would actually do. And we can work that up with Democratic Services Committee, clearly involve Councillor Thomas, group leaders, the relevant lead member in what that should be.
There are quite a few hands up. If we just sort of get a feeling for the people who have got their hands up as to where we go. We've Councillor Rhys Thomas.
Thank you very much. I've actually taken my hand down now because I did have a few things prepared to say. I would have preferred if a motion like this maybe had come forward with the support of all the political groups rather than one group. We've heard the politics of it from Paul Penlington, but I find myself agreeing with Gary there that the best thing to do is to get some sort of clarity what this young person's champion would be. As an ordinary member, I'm already have the responsibility as a corporate parent. I feel that as a ward member, I am inclusive to children and young people. Many of the school governors, we are very, very involved with this. And the next layer, as Gary Williams has suggested there, is that we do have cabinet responsibilities for schools, for young people in care, for keeping young people safe in the community. This is far more than just appointing someone this morning or deciding on the role this morning of having a young people's champion. So I would support this amendment that this goes to Democratic Services and comes back for a full debate when we know what we're discussing. And hopefully when it does come back, it can come back in a form that will have all party support. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. I thought Rhys summed that up quite well, and I was very happy with Gary Williams' way forward. So I was going to bring my hand down, but after being asked by you, I do need to just say a couple of things. I do believe that this has to be taken out of the political arena, but I do believe what Paul Pendleton said about these stats that were in existence and representing one of the most deprived wards in the whole of Wales. And I certainly don't wear that as a badge. I have to look at child poverty within my ward, and child poverty, I've got to say, is soaring. So I do hope that we do take into our debate whenever this happens in looking at a new champion, that they are au fait with the universal credit cuts and how severe this is. That out in areas of deprivation such as Rhyl, Denbigh and others within Denbighshire. But in principle, I do agree that this should be come back to full council with a full report that would be compiled, looking at all the issues and how certainly a champion can actually forward the ambitions of what we're trying to achieve, or what the councillor that proposed it is trying to achieve. So I do look forward to this full report on this role. But I also have to say that we all have, we've got school champions, we've got school committees, and I'm sure we should connect with them to be able to give some support to whoever is the champion, because they have an awful lot to offer. School committees, school councils are most important, and I do believe every school has one. So that's all I have to say, Chair, but thank you, and I will take my hand down now. Thank you for bringing me in.
Thank you. Councillor Bobby Feely.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to give a bit of context, back in 2008 or 9, I can't quite remember which, I took on the role of Older People's Champion because the Older People's Commissioner wanted to have every council to have an Older People's Champion. This became statutory to have an Older People's Champion within the 22 local authorities in Wales, and everyone has got one. And with that came, you know, it was the first thing I did was to have a look at, you know, the job spec, if you like, the job description of that. The first line being something along the lines of everybody over 50, which shocked me rigid at the time, I can remember thinking. But anyway, since then, the other champions that local authorities have, and we have 4 all told in Denbighshire, is at the discretion of the local authority. I did have a word with Gary, and I'm sure he will remember, a couple of years ago to say, can we work up champion's role description, not just children's, because at the time we didn't have a children, you know, and I'm in favour. I think that would be a good idea. At the time we didn't have a children's champion, but Gary was going to get the roles of champions, a job spec drawn up. So I wonder, Gary, if it would be possible at the same time as pulling together a role for the children's champion, whether or not you could do a similar specification for all the champions outside of the Older People's Champion, which I'm no longer the Older People's Champion. That's passed on to another councillor now, Ellie Chard, who does a grand job. But, you know, perhaps we could use this as an opportunity, Gary, to sort of make the roles more specific to each of the roles we put forward. And on the children's champion, if I can just say here, I can remember when I first became a governor at Rose Street School in Ruthin, going to the Children's Council to ask questions. And my goodness me, did they ask me some questions? So, you know, they've got a really good grip of what to ask and what's important to them. So I don't think we should discount any age group. Maybe we could even have one of those people outside, one of those young people outside of the council to be our champion and to speak up for young people. You know, it's just food for thought.
Thank you. Councillor Amos Wynne.
Thank you very much. The discussion has been very special, I believe, and I would be very happy to second the amendment, as Gary has suggested in his last contribution, that this role, or that this decision is deferred until the report comes back. We've referred to Young People's Champion, Children's Champion, There is another category, young adults. These will be the ones who will be voting 16 years old and up. Some will be voting for the first time next May. We've got to educate across the whole age range, starting from the primary school right until they're preparing to go to colleges and universities. I agree entirely with what Gary has said. And as my fellow councillor Rhys Thomas said, I would like to see this amendment being passed. I know that Councillor Tony Thomas has accepted it, and I'm not aware that anybody's seconded it, and I'm happy to do it if that's the wish. But please, can we look carefully at how we will prepare our citizens for the forthcoming elections and future elections as well, and encouraging them to be councillors, stand for council themselves in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wynne. Councillor Martin Holland did second the notice of motion.
The amendments.
I'm not sure.
No.
Can I come in?
Sorry, I'll be quiet.
Councillor Martin Holland.
Yeah, just can I just come in, because I seconded the original motion along with Tony. I'm more than happy for this to be referred back to look at. In my eyes, this is not about elections next year. This is about the previous motion we had, where we wanted to talk about engaging with all sections of society. And we don't, yes, we do engage with some of our school children, but we don't engage with them all. And I think it's important. Rhys mentioned, we are corporate parents. How, when do we meet with those children? Who supports those as counsellors? So it's about broadening our approach to schools. We have an excellent track record when it comes to primary schools. We invite them in on a regular basis, and I think most councillors have sat in those sessions. But once they go to secondary school, we don't engage with them very often. We have gone to various meetings, in relation to the environment. We attended a meeting not so long ago, many of us, but we don't really engage. So I think it's about getting young people to understand Denbighshire County Council, and also, moving to help them understand what we all do and how we function. So I'm happy to support the amendment. That's not a problem. And I look forward to this coming back as a paper.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Pennington.
Thank you, Chair. I've put a few motions in the past myself, and I've been very robustly questioned about what I intend. And I've always had the facts and figures to hand to explain what I'm trying to do. A few people have said, what do these champions actually do? And we've now said, we'll talk about that in the future. So I find it quite insulting that so much time has been taken up by a motion that's not been thought out, not been planned out. It's got no real reason and rationale behind it, apart from having a nice fancy title for somebody. I'll tell you one thing, as I said, I've been working with teenagers and children for nearly 30 years, and one thing they do not like is being told what they need by elderly counsellors as they see us. So I would support what various members, Hugh Hilditch and Bobby and a few other people have said, is that if we are to have a young people's champion, then young people and children themselves should have a rather large input into that and perhaps even vote on who it's to be, not us. And that would perhaps take the politics out of it too. Thank you.
Councillor Gareth Davis.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just from me, it just seems to be a motion that's become well overly complicated throughout this debate. The motion itself is very simple: to appoint a young person's champion. In my mind, that's anyone under the age of 18 who falls into the remit of Denbighshire County Council services, education, social services, and whatever else may be there. So I would have been happy to support Tony's motion as it originally stood, but it looks like it's going another way. But yeah, I think it's been overly complicated. And I think it would actually be nice for the role holder, once elected, to actually work with young people to form that position after being appointed in a role, and have some autonomy away from the council. I think that would be nice and a little bit more authentic than it going to bureaucratic scrutiny committees and meeting after meeting to define a job description that is under the title of subtle political statements that have been made during this debate today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hugh Irvine.
Thank you. Everybody. Yeah, well, of course, naturally, one supports in principle everything that's been said this morning, and I support the motion and the fact it's been seconded with amendments. But it concerns me that really there's an element of kicking this into the long grass here, as Gareth has just touched on. That, you know, we've got, I think what has stimulated this discussion probably is the fact that there are elections coming next year. There are people who will be entitled to vote who maybe wouldn't have been 5 years ago. We want to make them more aware of the issues, and that's absolutely great. But I really think by the time we put this through our own democratic and then actually
Irvine, you're breaking up.
Sorry, I'll take the camera off. Sorry, there we go. So we get to the point where we all get to where everybody's trying to get this morning. We're going to go into a democratic process which isn't going to make a big contribution to political activities in the spring of next year. But be that as it may, it's good that we get to young people in principle. Can I also mention that the Welsh Government did introduce something called a Welsh Parliament, where I know there are young people appointed for their various areas to that. And is there a possibility here of linking in with those young people, because they're obviously committed already to the principle of the democratic process? They may have something to offer to our thinking about having a young person to champion. So that might be something else to think about. I look forward to seeing what comes out of it. But I fear, as already been said, that we're getting too complicated, and it's going to take an awful long time to come out with something that's going to be acceptable to all concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Last two speakers now.
Madam Chair, I propose that the amended proposal proceeds. I'm proposing that it goes to the vote. That's part of the standing orders that we have.
I second that.
I'll have the last two comments from Councillor Gwyneth Kensler and Councillor Brian Jones. Please keep your comments brief.
The question will be put.
It says the question will be put. Does that have to be accepted, doesn't it, Gary? There is an order, but it is possible for the chair to make a decision to allow someone else to speak. So it's up to the chair's discretion. If the chair's happy that there are only two more speakers, there's also a time limit to discuss a notice of motion of 30 minutes, and we're nearly there. We've got a few minutes left. So my advice is that it's up to the chair whether she is happy to allow the last two speakers to speak.
I will allow the last two speakers to speak, but please make your comment brief. Thank you. Councillor Gwyneth Kensler.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Mae'n llaw I wedi bod I fyny ers...
Thank you very much. My hand has been up for quite a while now. I agree entirely with what Gary has been suggesting. I disagree with Gareth, and it's not often that I disagree with him, but I think that we do need to think about this in detail, about the role, how it'll operate. I would also like to include reports from our current champions so that we can all find out what they are doing and what they are seeking to do, So I would like that to be included as well. So I agree totally with the amendment.
I'll withdraw my opportunity to speak, Chair. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, if I can hand over to Gary Williams to take us through the voting process.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're in the position where the question effectively to be put to members is, are they happy for this motion to be referred to the Democratic Services Committee for them to work up a role description and bring a report back to council for council to make a final determination? Again, I think it's a matter for members. You have a mover and a seconder, because I think Councillor Thomas and Councillor Holland as a seconder said they were happy with that amendment. I think as well, given the tone of the debate, probably it's easy to say you've got a mover and seconder. Is there anybody against that?
Can I ask members, is there anybody who objects to the proposed? Object. We have Councillor Gareth Davis. Bear with me, I can't see the screens, both screens. Is there anybody else objecting?
Martin Holland and Hugh Irving got the hand up.
Apologies.
Martin, that was to speak. That was to speak, not voting.
So the only objections that we can see is Councillor Gareth Davis. Can you please speak up if there's anybody else who wishes to oppose this notice of motion? No.
Okay, Chair, I think you can accept that as having been carried by affirmation of the meeting, and what
Thank
we'll
you.
do is we'll take a report to Democratic Services Committee and come back to council.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 7 of the agenda, it's the Council Forward Working Programme, our Council Briefing Forward Working Programme.
Thank you, Chair. The Forward Work Programme is there for members to see. We've got a meeting in October and then again in December. We do have a workshop for members next week on the real living wage, and we will be looking to put into the diary before the end of September a workshop in respect of a current consultation by Welsh Government on statutory guidance for corporate joint committees. So we will be holding a workshop to brief members on that. We don't have a date identified as yet, in order that we can formulate a response based on those representations. Clearly, we'll be bringing a report back on the champion question as well. Democratic Services Committee, I think, meets at the beginning of October, so if we can get the report to them, then we'd be able to bring it back to the next council, hopefully.
Lovely, smashing, thank you very much. And I think that is the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you very much, councillors, for joining us this morning and being kind with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine.
Well done, Christine.
Well done, Christine.
Well done.
Cheers, Christine. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
You did a good job, Christine.